left side of things. Y'all, it has been a whirlwind of a week. As y'all know, I have been tormenting myself for the past 3 weeks watching that trial. I watched every minute of, well, not every minute of it. I did have to work, but it was on in the background since I've been working from home. And I've been listening to it, and we got the verdict that we'd hoped for. Homeboy is going away. Now, listen, we already know that the max sentence on him was 40 years. But I don't, when the sentencing happens in a few weeks, it's about 8 weeks away. I don't want y'all getting disappointed when he only gets about 12. I know you're asking yourself, how is it that way? Why is that happening that way? But you know what? That's the way the law works. We know he's not a first time offender. This is the first time he's been found guilty. But he's going to get some time. And the Floyd family is definitely receiving some justice. Now, I don't want everybody running out here talking about, woo, we've come a long way. Oh my God. Now, yes, we are making progress. And I'm not going to tell you that we're not, because when have you ever known police officers to testify against other police officers? It just doesn't happen. But we have too many other issues and too many other cases out here where, sometimes law enforcement doesn't behave themselves like they should. So I'm not like completely satisfied, because you know what? We got our neighbors to the south. Until the attorney general down in Kentucky brings charges against the law enforcement officers that shot Breonna Taylor while she was asleep in her bed, I'm not going to talk about how much better we are. We're not that much better. We still got work to do. But shout out to Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison for putting together an amazing team. I'm telling you, that team was dope. I felt bad for the defense attorney because he already had a bad case to try to defend anyway. But the prosecutors just ate him up. They ate him up every chance they got. So listen, if you want Todd Rokita to bring charges, please know that's not going to happen. And if you're still not sure how policy making and elections and politics come into play with everything, those charges are not filed against that former police officer if the Attorney General of the state of Minnesota was not Keith Ellison and was not about justice. So think about that. Me, I'm always talking about find out who you need to vote for, figure out who you need to elect. This is a prime example. If we want justice, if we want real justice, we have to put people in place that are going to make sure that we get justice. All right. Now, I just want y'all to know, yes, I am pleased. As they said in one of my favorite movies, Philadelphia, I'm satisfied. I'm satisfied, but I'm going to keep on fighting for these other families that have not received justice yet. Okay. So happy Earth Day. Come on now. We know it's Happy Earth Day. We want to try to take care of the planet. We got to do better. There's some legislation out there to improve how we treat our environment. The Environmental Council had a live discussion earlier with Jesse Carbonda. You should check it out. I've placed it on my team action page. Watch the video. It's going to give you some great information. It talks about how you can be involved if the environment is your thing and you want to make sure that there's legislation being passed that addresses the deficiencies we have in our environment. Check it out. I'm telling you, the Environmental Council is dope. They're doing amazing things. All right, what's happening in the State House? Well, it's into session. It's over. I do believe I want to give all of the Democrats in the General Assembly a group hug. They've had to endure some messiness this year. I don't know how cool I would have been. I know Representative Porter was super cool when he was disrespected on the floor, but that's just one of the things. So let's talk about some highlights, right? Last Thursday, Senate Bill 169 was signed into law. The bill, authored by State Senator J.D. Ford, requires housing with services establishments, the legal classification for assisted living facilities to publicize specific information about the care they provide for residents with Alzheimer's and other causes of dementia. So between, Representative Porter getting his bill signed into law that deals with Alzheimer's and dementia. J.D. Ford has as a sister bill that does the same thing when it looks at the facilities. I'm telling you, this senator and that representative, they are looking out for people. They are writing legislation that improves lives, and that's what we're talking about. So congratulations on Senator J.D. Ford passing SB 169, getting it signed into law, and it will go into effect this year, July 1st. So this is great. And what J.D. Ford said was SB 169 will lift a tremendous weight off the shoulders of folks in my district and across Indiana who struggle with finding the right place for their loved ones to be cared for. I applaud you, bruh. You know I love you to death, and I'm so grateful that you got this passed. So thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, you know it was the final hours of the General Assembly, and lawmakers overwhelmingly passed a 2-year state budget filled with one-time spending and an unexpected amount of new education dollars. So the Indianapolis Star reports, in a rare move, nearly every Democrat voted for the $37.4 billion 2-year budget drafted largely by Republican leaders who have a supermajority in the State House. In fact, the budget received the most yes votes of any budget bill this year. Historically, the party in the minority usually votes against the budget bill, which tends to be filled with spending priorities for the majority party. It was unusual. It was an unusual budget cycle. The economy is recovering at a quicker pace than predicted due in part to the vaccine rollout and the stimulus checks by our president, Joe Biden. Come on. And the American Rescue Act, Joe Biden. Come on. Plus, the state received roughly $3 billion directly from the American Rescue Plan. So, as Senator Eddie Melton from Gary says, thank God for Joe Biden. Thank God for the American Rescue Plan. Now, I want to tell you that State Representative Cherish Pryor is pleased to see an increased funds for food banks in the new state budget. We are now acting responsibly by taking the new American Rescue Plan dollars and putting them where funding is needed the most. I can't think of a better cause than food banks, which feed our families in need. Again, you know, the things that matter, right? The things that are important to people. We're going to be using that money because, you know, if Houston had his way, that money would go into a rainy day fund, even though we got holes in our roof. Y'all know how he is. He want to pretend like money is supposed to sit there. So now, as you guys know, you know, this is not an election year, but it is a reorg, rebuild, reestablish. But one of the things that we forget sometimes, yes, we always want new ideas and we want to do the latest and greatest, but you also have to know where you come from to know where you're going. And that is why I'm doing a series called The Legends. Right? And this week on The Legends, we have, y'all don't know what he's been through. I'm telling you, he has sacrificed and worked hard for Hoosiers all over our state. Y'all give it up for my guest tonight, former Congressman from the 9th District, Baron Hill. Baron, welcome to the show.
Glad to be here, Beta.
I'm so glad to talk to you. First of all, thank you, sir, for giving me some of your time tonight. I'm excited about talking to you. But for the people who really aren't familiar with who you are and your long career, tell the people who you are and where you come from.
I'm originally from Seymour, Indiana. I was born and raised there in Seymour, in southern Indiana. My first elective office was the Indiana General Assembly. I got elected to District 66 in southern Indiana, and had the privilege of serving there under Evan Bayh and Frank O'Bannon.
Wow.
And Republicans Bob Orr. I served there for 8 years. And then I got this crazy idea that a 37-year-old guy could run for the United States Senate. So in 1990, I ran against Dan Coates, and everybody kind of snickered and laughed at this guy who had no national experience could actually take on a United States senator, would actually run for the United States Senate. But I did, and I walked the state of Indiana, literally walked the state of Indiana from the Ohio River to Lake Michigan, and almost pulled the upset of that year. Got around 47% of the vote, big surprise to a lot of people. but it gave me the opportunity to establish myself politically at the national level. And so 8 years later, Lee Hamilton decided not to run for re-election to the Congress. He'd served for 34 years. And he called me up one day and asked me if I would be interested in running for his seat since he was going to retire. I told him that I would and ran and got elected and served in Congress for 10 years.
Well, I think you...
Three presidents. Bill Clinton was the first president I served under. Then George Bush and my favorite president, Barack Obama.
Hey, now we all agree with you on that one. You know, I imagine going into Congress for the first time, not having any national experience was probably an eye-opening experience. What were those first few weeks and months like for you?
Like probably most members who get elected for the first time in Congress, you don't know where everything is. You don't even know where the bathrooms are. So you got to get oriented, so to speak, to the new environment that you're living under. And it took me a while to do that, but I was also intimidated by the fact that Congress was something I always was proud of. You know, our country, I think it was one old timer who said that democracy is the worst form of government except for all the others. And democracy can be ugly at times. And when I got there, I was a little bit surprised at the politics. I knew of the politics since I served in the Indiana General Assembly for 8 years. But I didn't think the politics would be as extreme in Washington, D.C. as it was back home in Indiana. But to my surprise, in answer to your question, the politics was even, the politicalization was even more extreme in Washington, D.C. than it was back at home.
Wow. And see,
that took some adjustment.
I bet. And, you know, one of the things that we often hear is there was a time where, you know, people would work across the aisle. Joe Biden, President Biden, that was his major campaign pitch, was that I know how to work across the aisle. How are you able to create those relationships and work across the aisle and get things done?
Well, I think the first thing that you have to do is not participate in the political arguments. Once you do that, you become stigmatized. And I resisted the urge to get involved in some of those big arguments. I tried to be civil with my Republican colleagues as well as my Democratic colleagues. And believe me, Dana, that's not easy sometimes because you want to strike back.
Okay.
When somebody says something ridiculous, you want to slap them. Okay, that's ridiculous. So you have to kind of bite your tongue, which I did. And because of that, I was able to reach out to Republican colleagues and actually get along with them and work with them.
And that's good because bottom line is, like, you know, we're a huge 300 million plus country. Not everybody is going to see everything the same way. In order for us to get things done, we have to learn how to talk to people who differ from us. And even sometimes we argue with people who are on the same side as us. I mean, that sometimes is even more difficult because you're like, we on the same side, dog.
Yeah, really.
So you talk about some of the key pieces of legislation that you either authored, co-authored, sponsored. I know that you voted for the Affordable Care Act, but talk about some of the things that you were introducing when you were in Congress.
Well, one of the things that I introduced, I was labeled as a moderate to conservative Democrat. That means different things to different people, I've learned over the years. My conservative credentials was basically I wanted to make sure that we were spending taxpayer money wisely. I didn't get too much involved in the social issues, though I do have my opinions about that as well. But I always felt like that we need to be good stewards of the taxpayer money and that we need to spend it wisely. And so balanced budgets were important to me. One of the things that I did pass and urged President Obama to get behind and to sign into law was a bill that I introduced that would, it was called PAYGO. All it means is if you're going to spend new money or you're going to cut taxes, you got to figure out a way to pay for it. Because if you don't do that, then other programs suffer.
Okay.
And so it's called PAYGO. And I went to President Obama. This is during the time when we had the great economic crisis back in 2008. And we were spending a lot of money to try to get the economy going again. And I used that as an opportunity to convince President Obama that once we got through this economic crisis that we were in, that we need to go back to balanced budgets and spend money wisely. And the way you do that is through PAYGO.
Okay.
And he got on board with PAYGO, agreed to endorse it, and we passed it into law. So that was a major piece of legislation that we passed that's still in effect today. Though sometimes they try to get around it.
Yeah, but that's great because I know like the Mike Pence had been in the House for a long time, and he didn't get any bills passed in the law. And here you spent just 10 years. And because you were coming at it from a common sense point of view, not trying to be up in people's lives, you were able to pass legislation that benefited people. That's dope.
Well, there's, they say there's work horses and showboats in Congress. I was never a showboat. I didn't want the limelight. I wanted to work behind the scenes and get things done. And I think you can be much more effective. Now, it takes you a little longer to get credit for those kinds of things because when you're on television all the time and you're showboating, you're getting all the attention, but it doesn't help the American people too much.
Wow. See, now I got to go check myself. Do I want to be a no. we want to get work done. That's it. And I think that the big thing about that was when you when you voted for the ACA, the Affordable Care Act, the Obamacare, the reaction from the other side and in the state of Indiana wasn't too terribly kind at the time.
No, it wasn't. And I thought it would be over time. But it took a whole lot longer than I thought it would take for people to accept it and to like it. But it sure has helped an awful lot of people. I still get comments from people that are so appreciative that we passed the law. And the ones that mean the most to me are the ones that have told me that lives have been saved because they were able to get the insurance. The biggest statistic that surprised me as we was going through that debate on the Affordable Care Act was that 30,000 people a year died in America because they were afraid to, not afraid, but they could not get insurance. And they wouldn't go to the doctor because they didn't have insurance. 30,000 people every year died because they did not have insurance. So now that the Affordable Care Act was passed, those people were able to get insurance. And I've heard from several of my constituents who have expressed their thankfulness for that law being enacted because they could get insurance and didn't have to have the fear of dying.
Yeah, that's deep. Now, in 2016, I had the chance to meet you on the campaign trail. That's where I'm not gonna lie. Everybody that's heard me talk knows that I am an elected official groupie. So I was pretty much, being a groupie around you because you had already won seats, you had won elections, and I always thought like I want to be that. But I had a chance to meet you, especially up in Hamilton County when you were out making your rounds, running for Senate. I felt like you had done the work that was necessary to stay on the ballot and do the work. But one of the things that I think people miss, and they miss out on who you are as a leader, is that you were a team player. After the primary for Senate, you took us. I'm having a hard time saying it. You stepped back and allowed Evan Bayh to get on the ticket. I know that had to be hard, but being a team player means you do what's necessary. How were you able to kind of like reconcile that? We don't have to go into super details, but that was big for me. I was like, how did you do? Because we were working the same amount of time.
You mean when in the Senate race that I dropped out of?
Yeah, against Todd Young. Yeah.
But that's a long story. As you said, I won't go into all the details about it. But I've always I'm an old athlete. I was a basketball player when I was young, football player, ran track. And I was always knew the importance of being on the team, because if you got the team all moving in the same direction, liking what they're doing, you can be more effective and you can win. And for me, it's all about winning for the American people. And the best way that you can do that is to be a team player.
Absolutely.
And as I've said before, you can be a showboat, or you can be someone who's trying to do the things that's good for the American people.
Yeah.
And
yeah. I mean, listen, my respect level for you went through the roof. You weren't the only one that season that I know was asked to, step down. Keith Potts, who is now the counselor on the city county council here in Indianapolis, he was running for a Senate seat in the General Assembly. They asked him to step down for Pam Hickman, and he did. But the thing was is that he didn't go away, right? He stayed with it. He helped to run the Hillary office here in Indianapolis. And then the next thing you know, he's running for council and he gets elected. So, good things come when we work as a team. And that takes me to our party. You've seen a lot with our Democratic Party in the state. And now that we have reorg, this is the time that we talk about what we want to do next. You've seen a lot. First, talk about how we won before. Let's talk about our successes and how we can just look back on all the great things that we've done.
We got to break out of the mindset. That's the first thing that we need to do. Democrats have a hard time in Indiana. They always have. But it doesn't mean that we're always in the minority party. We've had great successes as a party. And we had great successes when we broke out of the mindset that we were always going to be the minority party. Let me give you an example. I've told this story 1,000 times. When I entered politics back in the early 1980s, Democrats were on the bottom looking up, just kind of like we are right now. And we had huge minorities in the House of Representatives, State House, minorities in the State Senate. We hadn't held state office for 20 years. And I had been recently elected to the state legislature and was appointed by then Minority Leader Mike Phillips to be the elections chairman 2 years later. And we had, I think, 38 or 39 members. I think we have less than that now, but still 38 or 39 is
a minority. Yeah.
And when I was appointed to be the elections chairman, I set a goal of getting 45 Democrats in the House. That means we had to elect 6 to 7 new Democrats. And the reaction was interesting. It was, people laughed at me. Said, there's no way in the world that we can pick up that many seats in the Indiana House of Representatives because of all the gerrymandering that is going on. And I said, well, you know what? We're going to set that goal anyway. And we're going to go out and raise money. And we're going to develop a message that resonates with the people of Indiana. And we're going to see what happens. And so we did. Dana, we didn't get 45 seats that year, that election year. We got 48 seats that year. And we started the march to getting the majority 2 years later.
Wow. And
elected then, also later, Evan Bayh as Secretary of State and then Governor. We held the majority for, I don't know how many years, 6 to 8 years. Frank O'Bannon got elected governor after Evan Bayh. And those were considered the glory years.
Right. And
it happened because we changed the mindset. You got to deprogram yourself of mental limitations.
Come on.
And you got to think positively. And if you do, it's contagious and it will happen. But you got to think that way and break through the mindset. And that's what we did back in those years.
So you say break the mindset, but how do you do it? What do you do to tinker with folk mind so they change?
You got to reach out to the people. You got to meet them on their own turf. That year we went out and we literally went to Kiwanis clubs and JC clubs and Lions clubs into all the different communities and talked to people and said, who in these communities are popular? They work hard, not just in politics, but for their communities. Who would be a good candidate? And talk their issues and reach out to them. And that's what we did. And as a result of that, we acquired good candidates who were people that were very much involved in their communities, got them to run for office. They did. They knew what to say. We didn't need to tell them what to say. They knew their communities.
Right.
And when they did, they got elected. And that's the way you do it. It's hard work. It's fundamental. It's grassroots, but it can be done.
I love it because that's what everybody keeps talking about. Seems like we went away from what made us successful in the past. Not sure why, right? I don't know why we went away with the winning formula, but it seemed like we did. And I like what you just said. You said when you have candidates, let them talk to their community. I understand that we think I do. I get it all the time. People tell me, Dana, we need to have a top-down message from the party to disseminate out to all of the counties and all the districts. And I still believe that I think you have to tailor whatever your message is to your community, because what I'm talking about in Marion County isn't necessarily going to fly in Cass County. It's not necessarily going to fly in Allen County. It's not saying that we as Democrats don't believe in the same thing, but you got to let that candidate speak to their community, their neighbors, and we can give them talking points, right? But you got to let them be themselves in their communities. And so what did we do as a party to offer the necessary resources to these folks? I mean, we had to give them something. You said you raised money. Were you able to give them money? Were you able to set up a great get out the vote mechanism?
We raised the money. I call it the M&Ms.
Okay.
Money and message.
Money and
the
message.
Two M&Ms. You got to eat your M&Ms and raise that money and deliver the message. And the candidates who are good candidates speak to the issues that are involved in their own communities. And when you give them also money to take their message to the people that they're asking their folks to vote for them, then it works. And it can work here again in 2021.
I love it. And see, people think everything is new under the sun, don't they? They think they're coming up with something new all the time. Ain't nothing new. That's why I think it's so important that we talk to the people who have been successful in our state, know how to win, know how to galvanize people. One of the things that drives me crazy as a 50-year-old, right? I'm like in between. I'm not really, an elder yet, but I sure as heck ain't young, right?
But you don't look 50. I can tell you that.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you. But I'll be 51 in a couple of months.
You look terrific.
Well, thank you. I'm lighting, and there's a filter. No, I'm just kidding. But the thing is like I hear, like I'm in that middle space. Like you got the boomers and the millennials, right? And I hear the same thing from both of them. It's almost like the young folk and the elders are not necessarily communicating and listening to each other in the way that they should, because nothing is new. We just have to put in the work. Why do you think sometimes people want to shy away from getting their hands dirty? And when I mean getting their hands dirty, going out doing the grassroots work.
I don't know, other than it's hard work. It's a sacrifice, no question about that. Most people, understandably, want to be raising their families and taking care of their kids and going to ball games and that sort of thing. So they don't want to get down into
the weeds,
the difficulties of running for political office. And it is difficult.
It is.
There's no question. There's a big sacrifice. But you know what? We need people to make those sacrifices. Absolutely. If we're ever going to get things turned around, especially here in Indiana, then we need people to make the sacrifices and get the job done.
Absolutely, because we were talking earlier, and legislation that's coming out of our state house does indeed cost lives if it's not the right type of legislation. I know that Thomasina Marsili, who is now the 8th District Chair and started an organization called GRID, she always talked about how a lot of our counties don't even have medical facilities.
Right.
Not just communities within a county, entire counties. And if we're not putting the money into infrastructure, I know a lot of people only think infrastructure is roads and bridges, but medical facilities, it costs lives. And that's why it's so important that we get people elected who are going to be focused on how to improve lives, right?
Exactly. And I think the biggest issue in Indiana politics, at the state level especially, is education.
Mm.
And, what Republicans have done over the last 20 years, there's going to be a price to pay for that for a long, long time until we get back to the fundamentals. We talked about the fundamentals earlier of making sure that public schools are well funded, and not at the expense of private schools. I know this all these vouchers and that Indiana is now leading the nation on is a mistake, Dana.
Yeah,
it's a mistake.
Yeah,
we shouldn't be funding private institutions with taxpayers' money for a lot of reasons.
absolutely.
And public schools are paying a price for that.
Absolutely.
And teachers are leaving because of pay and other reasons. And so, I'm hoping that someone on the Democratic side will step up at the governor's level in particular and say enough is enough. We need to get this thing turned around. Our children are not being served well because of the education policies of the Republican Party, and we have to get it turned around. Absolutely. It's very essential that we do this.
Oh my God!
As the father of, or as the husband, I should say, and brother and brother-in-law of 3 teachers in my family, I know the importance of good public teachers and how they should be treated. And they're not being treated right now. And our children are suffering because of it. And it's hard to see the suffering that is going on, but believe me, it's happening. It's going to get worse unless we get it turned around. And I'm hoping that somebody will step up to the plate and run for governor on the education issue and get this thing turned around.
Well, you could do it. Just throwing it out there. Just throwing it out there. You could do it. Well, and you're right, because we don't even recognize right now what the long-term effects and what the long-term impact will be on underfunding and under providing for our public schools. Senator Todd Young was on Morning Joe this morning, and he talked about how he wanted to have these tech innovative solutions, and we've got to compete with China because they're doing this, that, and the other, and we got to come up with these new technology and innovation and all of that. And the only thing I could think about was, then you need to talk to your boys in the Indiana GOP, because they are not listening. They are doing everything they can to shrink the pool of people who are going to be ready to go into STEM and be innovators.
Well, you're exactly right. It's a new day, and we need to be teaching our children the new innovations. But it's hard to do with the educational policies of this administration. No question about it.
Absolutely, education is huge, and I want the teachers to understand. Stop voting Republican. I don't understand, because it hit me one day. I was talking to another teacher, and they were like, "Yeah, we can keep crying about how we're getting paid, but there's too many teachers that are voting against their interests." And so, come on, teachers, y'all want raises? I want you to have raises. I want you to educate. I want the best and the brightest that the industry has to offer. Now, it is Earth Day, right? I gotta talk about some environmental issues in the state of Indiana. We rank so low when it comes to environmental protections, and I did not get, and that's my fault for not doing my research, but I did not get a final on what happened to the wetlands bill. But that being said, every session there seems to be another bill that comes out that attempts to strip away environmental protections here in Indiana. I don't understand why they don't know that you gotta have clean air and clean water to live. You can only make so many millions without air and water. You're not gonna make very many, actually. Talk about the environmental concerns we have here in the state of Indiana as well.
Well, the environment is negatively impacted in Indiana because the special interest groups in Indiana who pour a lot of money into political campaigns are dominating the conversation. That's the problem.
Yeah.
And until we break loose from that stranglehold that they have on on public policy, things are probably not going to change. And quite frankly, that's the reason why there needs to be change in Indiana.
Come on.
That's the reason why there needs to be a robust Democratic Party. The Republicans, and I'm not so negative on Republicans. There are a lot of good Republicans. Don't get me wrong.
Would you introduce them to me?
Someday I will, yes. But there are a lot of good Republicans, but they've been in power for a long time. And when you're in power for a long time, you kind of get used to the way things are, and the money that's coming in to the Republican Party in particular right now is corrupting the process.
Okay.
And that's the reason why it's so important for there to be a robust Democratic Party for people to move in a different direction. That can happen. But again, we got to get back to, we need to break that mindset. Once we break that mindset, once Democrats get back into power, then we can address these environmental issues that you brought up.
Absolutely. And I think that is more important than ever. And, you know, we call ourselves the Big Ten Party. I like the fact that you said, hey, you know, as a Democrat, I wasn't as focused on the social issues as I was the fiscal issues. There's nothing wrong with that. I think the problem that some of our brothers in our party feel like you have to be down with all the social issues. You have to be hammering all the social. When I ran against Speaker Bosma, I didn't even talk about, in District 88, I never talked about social issues because that's not what they were talking about in my district, right? And we have to, as a party, embrace all the different thought processes that make up this big tent, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. There's no question about it. And we should be doing that.
Yep. And you gotta have somebody that's willing to, you know, you're willing to wade in the water. And I joke and say, you know, if you know some good Republicans, introduce me to them. But I met a couple that I really liked and felt like that they had the lives of Hoosiers ahead of profits of organizations. It's just it's just the policies that they're writing and the legislation that they're putting forth that just makes me go, but you voted for that, right? And that makes it tough. And so in our party, we have to look at the person that's going to be writing policies, whether they're social issue policies, education policies, or fiscal policies, right, that impact Hoosiers the best. Wouldn't you say? I mean, that's my thought.
Well, you're exactly right. And until we have a different set of people that are running the show, so to speak, in Indiana, things aren't going to change. And that's the reason why I come back to saying we need a robust, strong Democratic Party that is offering a different agenda. And I think once that happens, then Indiana can start moving in a different direction.
Well, and it's not going to happen overnight, right? We have to inspire and encourage people to be involved. I know that, like, I've spoken at a couple of Hoosier Women Forward, which is one of my favorite groups, about what is expected at county party levels and district levels. And I've often received feedback that they've been disappointed in the reaction that they've gotten from those party chairs. And that's what's discouraging, right? When you reach out to the party and then the party doesn't. That's why I love this. What I had been doing for the last 4 years of deputy chair engagement was I wanted to be, okay, if you didn't have a positive experience over here, I'm going to show you what a Democrat is supposed to be like and supposed to be welcoming. I mean, and that's why, you know, I continue to be out here. I'm glad that you haven't gone away. I'm glad that you're still here because I see you on Facebook. I see you. I was like, oh, he's ready. He's ready to talk. So when we move forward and we're looking at the future, and you talk about having strong candidates and talking about having a strong party, you said education was one of those things that we need to focus on. What are some other areas that we really need to focus on?
Well, you already mentioned one of them, the environment.
Mm-hmm.
We need to have a more motherly, I think, approach to the environment. Make sure that this is God's green earth and that we need to protect it. So the environment is a very important issue in the state of Indiana. The other issue is bread and butter issues, is making sure that people have good jobs. And I don't know all the statistics like I used to in terms of Indiana payroll, but Indiana was always at the bottom of the barrel when we look at good paying jobs in Indiana. And if we're ever going to get that working class vote back into our fold as a party, we've got to reach out to those folks and say, we want to improve your standard of living. And there's a lot of different ways that we can go about doing that. Raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour is one of them, but there's a whole lot of other things that we can be doing too. So the bread and butter issues as relates to good paying jobs is also an issue that we need to address as Democrats.
What about healthcare? I know that's a huge. I mean, you were one of the voters on the Affordable Care Act, but in Indiana, homeboy Pence, he really didn't want to, implement Obamacare. So he had to do his HIP 2.0 or whatever it is. But in healthcare in Indiana, it's still a thing, right? People are not able to. You talk about jobs, but even some of those jobs don't have great benefits.
They don't, and you're right. Healthcare is another issue. So healthcare, education, good paying jobs, the environment, those are four issues that Democrats ought to be delivering a message on. Now, I would stop right there in terms of messaging. There's a whole lot of issues.
Oh, yeah.
But, if you go more than that, then people
it's too much
digesting all that. But those four issues are probably the main issues that we need to be addressing.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, like I said, I've kind of stuck with those same ones since 2015, and with the super minority, we haven't fixed any of them. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I tell people all the time, I started out as an angry lesbian when I was running, with RIFRA. But once you start understanding the issues and what people are talking about, your focus has to change.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that has happened, and this could possibly, conversation could get a little bit dicey. But the Republican Party has done a very good job of really not talking about those issues and making it a whole issue of us against them. And they've successfully done it. And when I say us against them, the Democratic Party has always stood up for equality, for minorities, for gay and lesbian people. But what has happened is the Republican Party has taken that and said, that is them. And we're going to be for you. And it has caused a very ugly division between, quite frankly, whites and blacks. And the Republican Party, especially at the national level, has done an ugly job of dividing this country on racial issues. And it's very unfortunate.
It is unfortunate.
What we have to do as a party is reach out to people who feel like that they are being left out and say, just because we stand up for minority rights, just because we stand up for gay and lesbian rights, doesn't mean that we're against you.
Come on. And
we need to do this. We need to speak to this because we'll never get them back unless we speak to them.
Absolutely. Gosh, it broke my heart when I went to go speak at a union hall to union workers, and I saw Trump signs. This is way back in 2016, of course. And I saw Trump signs, and I'm like, the union and the Democratic Party were like, yo, Siamese twins. Now all of a sudden, we've got to keep, I check in with, my David Fries and my union folk. Are we doing better? Are we doing better? Because if we don't go into union halls and we don't talk to both, skilled labor and the professional unions as well and bring those union folks back to the party because we're looking out for them, we're going to struggle in Indiana for a much longer time.
Exactly right.
I don't understand how, I still do not understand how the party that has managed to dismantle unions, busted them all up in Indiana, we're getting union voters. It just didn't make sense to me.
That's because they've done a better job at messaging. It's been an ugly message, but what we as Democrats have done is ignored the fact, and have even gone as far as to say that we can't get those people back anymore.
Yes, we can.
And yes, we can. Yes, we can. And we should.
I believe wholeheartedly we can get them back. I mean, the last 4 years was, the nightmare is over for now. But they managed to, like, with every seed they planted, they got some sprouts. The Marjorie Taylor Greens and Ted Cruz is just morphed into something unrecognizable, and they were going after stalwarts like Cheney, which I you don't have to comment on this, but I will never understand why anybody would go after Liz Cheney when her daddy shot somebody in the face. Are you crazy? You're not thinking this through. But we got rid of that non-government, and the other part of it was, why do we want people who hate government running government? They'll never run it the way we want it or should be ran, because they don't like it. They don't believe in it.
Yeah. Well, let's not forget that in Indiana, Barack Obama won Indiana.
Who?
Barack Obama won Indiana.
Yes, we did. 2008, baby.
Exactly. And it can be done again. And he won it because he reached out to the people that we've been talking about in this conversation. And we should be doing the same thing all over again as Democrats here in Indiana. And if we do that, we'll win.
I agree 100%. We got to get down and dirty, get in the grassroots, talk to people, knock on doors. Well, once COVID subsides, and get in those Kiwanis centers and all the places that people gather. I even want to go, like, to 4-H clubs. I'll go.
You gotta do.
And the other thing I think is important. Now we gotta, I call you. You're my first on my Legend series, right? Because I think it's so important that we hear from those of us that have been in the battle for a long time, because it takes a lot of resiliency to stay in this thing, right? And you've done that. You've had your highs, your lows, your successes, your losses, but you're still in the struggle. But one of the other things we have to do is we have to leave the ladder down, right? We got to leave the ladder down for the next generation, and we have to continue to cultivate those that are coming up behind us. Talk about, what kind of things you see or you've done, to make sure that someone younger, that you've mentored somebody, or, just anything, so people can take those ideas and run them themselves.
Well, when I was a member of Congress, I think my entire staff was younger than, I don't think there's anybody over 32 years of age.
Whoa.
And so you got to bring people on board. You got to invite them into your campaigns. You got to encourage them to run. My time has come. And I don't know if it's all gone yet or not, but I would rather see a whole lot of young people emerging to take over our party. That has to happen for us to be the robust party that I was talking about that we need earlier. I remember I just got through reading a novel on the early John Kennedy years, before he became president of the United States. And he ran for Congress, and then he decided to take on Henry Cabot Lodge, the incumbent senator on the Republican side in Massachusetts. And, what he did was exactly what we've been talking about, Dana. He had the money because his family had money, so he didn't worry about raising money. But he spent countless hours going into communities, staying up 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, meeting with people, getting to know them, making them feel comfortable with him, and him comfortable with them. That's what we need to be doing in Indiana. And so old timers like myself encourage young people to do that very thing. And if they will, they will be surprised at the results that they're going to get. And by golly, it needs to happen. It needs to start. We need to be doing this. Young people need to be doing these kinds of things, especially as Democrats, so that we can have that robust party that I was talking about in Indiana. And if we do, things will be different in Indiana, for the better, I think.
Absolutely. Now, listen, you're a sportsman, so when I tell you no championship team had a team full of rookies, and no championship team ever had a team full of 10-year vets, right?
Exactly.
There's always a mix. I don't care. You look at every championship team, there's a nice mix of veterans, a nice mix of people in their prime, and a nice mix of people who are just coming in the game, right? And if you don't figure out a way to bring all those voices together and get them marching in the same direction, we're not going to win. And again, it's not about, you do what I say, or if you don't follow me, you can't be down. It's allowing young people to make mistakes, and older folks going, okay, wait, this is maybe something you could have done differently, but not chastising. And then young people listening and taking that advice and not feeling like somebody old fogey stogie trying to tell me what to do. It's gotta be that meld. It's gotta be that blend. And the right coach will get that done. And I hope you're not. I mean, I know you. Okay, I'm just gonna put it out there right now. If you decide that you might want to make a run at governor, I'm just putting you on the spot just a little bit. I promised you I wouldn't, but I'm gonna put you on the spot just a little bit. If you decide, I am going to lobby you like the Dickens to be your lieutenant governor.
Okay, fair enough.
We make it a Hill Black ticket and we can make it happen. We can do this because there's value in what you bring to our party. There's value in what you bring to our state. A lot of people, I'm lucky. I get to talk to some of our greatest leaders in our state. A lot of people don't get that. So I appreciate you just, taking the time to share your knowledge and share your insight with our listeners, because, one of the greatest things I think about, like a lot of the Native American communities and a lot of the African tribes, is that they didn't always have to write things down. They had storytellers. And the storytellers are the ones that pass on the tradition. You ain't always going to find it in a book. You ain't always going to find it on paper or on film. But if you sit down and talk to your elders, you just might learn something. That's all I'm saying. Indiana's own Dana Black. We've been talking to Baron Hill today, and I'm trying to nudge him into running for governor.
Let me say this. You never say never. I'll go as far as to say that.
All right.
I've learned that over the years. But we need new blood in Indiana. I hope it will emerge.
It will.
I want to finish with one story.
Sure.
People who may be listening to this, who used to work for me, perhaps will say, "Oh no, he's not telling that story again, is he?" But I think it illustrates what needs to happen, because it addresses this mindset that we're in right now. We're in this mindset in Indiana as a party that we're always going to be the minority party, and we don't have to be the minority party. We can do this. Mm-hmm. And it's a story about Roger Bannister. Do you know who Roger Bannister is, Dan?
I've heard the name, but I do not recall.
Well, Roger Bannister broke the mindset.
Okay.
Back in the early 1950s, it was believed by physicians and trainers and athletes that a human being couldn't run a mile in less than 4 minutes.
Okay.
And then Roger Bannister went out one day in the early 1950s and ran a mile in less than 4 minutes. And everybody said, that's unbelievable. How did he do this? It's a miracle. But you know what the miracle was? Really?
The hard work.
Not the fact that he ran the mile in less than 4 minutes, but after he ran the mile in less than 4 minutes, everybody started running the mile in less than 4 minutes, because he had dehypnotized people from their mental limitations. And he got them to believe that you could do this. And that's what we need to do as a party in Indiana. We need to dehypnotize ourselves from our mental limitations, that we can no longer be the majority party, and start believing it. And once we start believing it, it will become contagious, and it will spread to the people in Indiana, and we will be the majority party again.
Whew! Well, you got me fired up. I'm ready to go. Indiana's own Dana Black. We are talking to Baron Hill. Yes, break the mindset. That's what he said. And we just got to go back to doing the basics, talking to people. You can't be afraid of people. You got to go talk to them. And like I tell people all the time, if I can run around Indiana looking like this in a tie, then you can go in your community, right, and talk to the people, because it's so important. My goodness, he dropped some nuggets. Y'all better pick them up. He dropped some nuggets. Indiana's own Dana Black. So, All right, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show, and let me know if it's something I need to do to be better, be stronger. You don't. I know how to take messages from my elders. You know what I'm saying? Just tell me what to do, and I'll do it, and we'll get it going and make it happen because we need a change here in Indiana, and you are speaking my language.
Well, you're doing it, Dana. I've always appreciated your show. I have watched it on Facebook many times. When you ran that tough election against Brian Bosma, you didn't quit. You rolled up your sleeve and you're doing what you're doing, and I commend you for it.
Well, thank you very much. All right, Indiana's on. So next week, listen, we got just what he's talking about next week. You got to have somebody they got to be strong. They got to have perseverance. Got to have some youth with some elder statesmen. Next week, we're talking to the new chair and vice chair of District 3. If y'all think I'm hype, y'all think I'm over the moon type hype, wait until you meet the new chair of District 3, Christine Bohm. She is a dynamite. I'm telling you. And she, you know what? And she bringing young folks with her. Everything Baron Hill talked about tonight. So next week, make sure you tune in. It's going to be one of the more entertaining, fun, lively. But if you got sensitive ears, you might not want to tune in. I do have to give that adult provision warning because between me and Christine, we can go. We can definitely go, but I'm looking forward to next week because I'm telling you it's going to be an entertaining show. She's going to get you fired up and tell you what you can do in District 3. All right, I want to just kind of go into one last thought before I sign off tonight. Session has come to an end, and there was some good legislation that came out, and there was some bad legislation. There was some instances where things got out of hand. Jim Lucas is still running around as an elected official saying all the asinine things that he says and does, and nobody holds him accountable. Todd Houston, we saw, was not able to wrangle his caucus as a speaker. They ran amok on him. He had no control. It's time. Okay, so I imagine around August and September, probably more after Labor Day, you're going to start seeing people who are going to be interested in running for office. You're going to start seeing their names pop up. And what you're going to need to do is find out who they are. And if you believe in what they're talking about, you're going to need to make sure that you support them. We didn't have any elections this year. And with elections coming up next year, trust, know, and believe, whatever came out of the General Assembly this year, next year's going to be worse. Not to mention, we talked about gerrymandering, but they're redrawing the lines. And here's the other thing you got to think about. We're not going to get our census numbers in until the late summer, early fall. So those district lines may not be drawn the way they are right now, and I guarantee you they're not. They're going to do some things to try to, again, shore up their supermajority. They haven't figured out yet that, all one party running the system is not a good thing, right? You got to have some checks and balances. Remember, keep your eyes open. Stay focused. Session is over. I showed you how to watch the bills. I gave you indications on how to go on that website and follow bills. I told you, get with your friends and y'all divide the bills up. Well, session is over now. Now the work of recruiting and training come into play. So you already learned about grid. You learned about hope. I've talked about team action, but I want to go back to the caucuses. I am excited to announce that I will be working directly with IDAC, the Indiana Democratic African American Caucus. We're going to work together, and we're going to put some training together and offer training to make sure that we have good representation. See, you got to have good representation. Training has to be available to a lot of people. I've already scheduled the new president of IDAC, Lindsey Brown, to come on the show so you can meet him. Another firebrand. I'm telling you, there's some great personalities out here, some hard workers out here, people to get you fired up. But if you are interested in running for office, There are multiple avenues for us to get you trained and get you the tools that you need to be successful. Now is the time to do it. You're not watching bills, right? Because there's no bills. You may be paying attention to stuff that's happening in Washington. That's fine. But now is the time for you to reassess your situation. Talk to your family members. Do you want to run for office, or do you just want to support someone who's running for office? Understand how much time it's going to take. Yes, I'm giving you homework. Understand how much time it's going to take, how much time you can afford to stay away from your family, or how much family time you're going to be out there. But now is the time for you to think about, how much more do I want to be involved? Because when those district lines get redrawn, it's going to be a madhouse. Everybody's going to be trying to find their spot. You're going to have incumbents trying to hold on to their spot, but everybody's got to figure out what they want to do, and we got to do this the right way. We got to be organized. We got to be energized. And we got to make sure that we motivate people to be involved. Do it with love. Do not do any of this work with malice in your heart. Do it with love. Don't be running around being, chatty Cathy and gabbing around. Just put your head down, ask the right questions, reach out to the people. Reach out to people like Baron Hill who have had successes. Talk to the people who know how to win. Right? And let's come together and think about how we are going to attack the 2022 election cycle, right? We got time. Let's put in the work. Okay? That's my rant. Second rant for today. I got a lot of them. Make sure you tune in to Indiana Talks to catch the show if you miss it live. Catch it on Indiana Talks. I'm working with my man, Gary Snyder of the Snyder Report, and we're putting together some things. And if you also want to contribute to this media thing that we're doing, because we got to get our message out, right? We know the Indianapolis Star is not going to focus in on us. We know WIBC ain't going to focus in on us. So we have to create our own messaging mechanism, all right? So, y'all, next week is going to be hot. Let's do this. And could y'all keep the snow out of Indiana? I'm done with the snow. I'm done with it. All right, y'all. I'll holler at y'all next time. Peace.